Okay, good morning. Welcome to Rhythms of Grace. My name is Elizabeth, and it is Friday morning, and I'm here with you today to share with you a little bit about grace for Nature Coast Church. And I am actually this morning going to talk about, it's kind of like a sports analogy. And I have to admit that I used to really strongly dislike sports analogies, like all kinds of sports analogies. They used to kind of drive me crazy when people would use one of those and then talk about God. It used to drive me nuts, but I don't feel that way anymore. Not at all, actually. I think when we experience the mercy and grace of Jesus, we can experience them in so many different kinds of ways in our life. And one of those ways that we can experience them are, of course, through sports. You know, God made us and designed us, and He designed our bodies to move and to play and to experience joy while we do that. And I think we can experience His grace and mercy through sports, of course, because of that. And just like all the other avenues of life where we experience His grace and His mercy and His love, through this life, you know, through our sorrows and our struggles and our joys and the gifts and talents that He gives us. And even nature, which I think is one of the big things. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. We see the creation that He made, and it echoes of Him all around us all the time if we can slow down and open our eyes to see it. That's one of my favorite ways that we can see His love and His grace. So yes, now even sports analogies can warm my heart to God. You know, wherever His love is, grace abounds, and where grace is present, love always is. So I do want to share with you kind of my version of a sports analogy. It's actually probably, I'm just really sharing more of a person that I learned about. The date was back on July 31st, where I learned of this person. I was sitting in a hospital room on that date with my mother-in-law, who was only going to live for a few weeks longer. Of course, at that time I didn't know that. But on July 31st, I was sitting at her bedside, and there were people in the room, family, and somehow we got on the conversation. I wish I could remember the details that day, but I do remember all of us sitting there talking. And we were talking, somehow a Saints player from the 70s came up in conversation, and his name was Tom Dempsey. I don't know if you know that name. I did not know that name. I don't know a lot about sports. But this player came up, and they were talking about him, that he held the record for the longest field goal kicked for 43 years. And I was like, okay, that's good. But they were telling me that he had a nickname due to a handicap that he had. The nickname is like almost offensive to me, but I guess they called him that, so I don't even want to repeat it. But he was born without his right hand and only a portion of his foot. He had a club foot. And he kicked this field goal with that club foot. And he had this record, and he held this record for 43 years. And at first, when they told me that he kicked it with this club foot, and they were telling me his nickname, and they were all telling me about this story, you know what? I didn't believe them. I thought they were just like pulling my leg because I didn't know anything. And it took a while for me to actually believe them. And I had to use Google on my phone that day. And I screenshotted what I found. And I'm going to actually read what I found on Google. So if you Googled Tom Dempsey, this is what you would actually read. So here's what I read. I'm going to read to you. It says, Tom Dempsey had seemingly no future in the NFL. Yet on November 8th, 1970, and you know what? I think today's November 9th. So that was like yesterday's date. That's kind of cool. On November 8th, 1970, Dempsey kicked a 63-yard field goal, setting an NFL record that endured for 43 years. Not in spite of his clubbed foot, but because of it. And that's what it says on Google. Not in spite of his club foot, but because of it. And I screenshotted that picture that day on July 31st because I remember thinking, like, that's grace. That's something I'll talk about one day on Rhythms of Grace. And so here I am, wow, he kicked that on November 8th, and it's almost November 8th, just a day past. I think, right? Today's the 9th? I think so. So I didn't know that I would do that so close to the date that he actually made the record, but okay. So what I want to share today, and why I thought that was like so amazing, and how this is like grace to us, is that his record, and really more importantly, his ability to even make that record, was not in spite of this clubfoot that he had, but because of this clubfoot that he had. This thing that he was born with, the way he was made, the thing that made him different, the thing that probably most people, maybe even himself, something that was seen as a disadvantage, maybe even a handicap, probably, I mean most people, I think today we still consider that a handicap, would be in itself a reason to not even play, really, to not even participate, to stay out of the game. Yet, in this great reversal, I think I said that last week on Rhythms of Grace, I talked about this great reversal. It was the exact reason that he not only succeeded, but that he stood out. See, Jesus always does these great reversals. And we all have these things about us, these unique things, something that makes us stand out. And sometimes, quite often, I think it's the one thing that we wish we weren't, the one thing we wish we could change, the one thing we wish were different about ourselves. Maybe it's the way we think. It's the one thing we think about, like if only I weren't this. If only I were more this way. If only I were less this. What are those thoughts we have, and how would we finish those sentences? Because we all have these things. Wishing we were different. Wishing we were healed. Wishing we were whole. In the places where we're fractured. In the places that we were broken. In the places where we really are just a sliver of something. Or seemingly too big. Or maybe too small. And if we see those things as flaws, if we see those things as disfigurements in ourselves, as handicaps, it can make us feel like the least of these, most likely. And when we feel that way, we do anything to cover those things up. So I can only imagine Tom Dempsey himself probably had days where he may have felt like the least of these, lacking somehow, compared to all those big, strong athletes, kind of maybe who look perfect in their physical fitness and their outside bodies. And maybe he felt like he was the one who didn't belong or fell short. Or maybe wasn't really wanted out there. We don't want that guy on our team. Look, what's wrong with him? How's he going to help us? How's he going to be any good to us? But on all the ways we actually feel this way, if we could actually let these parts of us be seen, maybe we could open up. Maybe it would help us share our need for Jesus. Maybe we could help remind each other that we're made in the image of Jesus, the image of God. And we'd expose more of Jesus and less of ourselves, because we'd be talking about him and we'd be less worried about ourselves. You know, there's a song by Matt Maurer that I want to share with you. The song is actually called The Least of These. If you Googled it, his last name is M-A-H-E-R. I think I pronounced it right, Matt Maurer. I think that's how you say it. And it's called The Least of These. And there's some lyrics in there, and there's just 3 lines I want to share with you. And he says, and he's talking about Jesus here, and in the song he says, "When he stole my heart between 2 thieves, that's when love became the least of these." You see, when Jesus came for the least of these, story after beautiful story in the Bible, in the New Testament, like for example, I'm just going to share a few of them with you, but there's the woman at the well, and she was all alone and she's full of shame and kind of like an outcast, and Jesus came, and not only did he touch her heart, but he took away her longing to be known. Because he comes for us the exact way that we need it. And that's why he looks different to everyone he comes to, and his encounters are different with them, because he's meeting that need in their heart. He touched the lepers, and when he did, he brought more than physical healing to them. He restored their humanity, and with that touch of love, that was the first touch they had, and that love heals, and that's what Jesus did. He restored sight to the blind. That was about so much more than their eyes. The first sight that they saw when they could see was this hand of love and these eyes of love that Jesus had. He met and sought relationships with the loner, with the dismissed, and with the fringe. And he told them that was in the discarded, and he told them that what had been told to them and the position that they'd had and held and what they believed to be true about themselves was not true. He said mine to them, and he saw value beyond measure, and he carried each one of them close to his heart. And they were not on the outskirts. They were the insiders. They were wanted. And if he himself is love, and Jesus is love, and if he himself is love, and he did these things with love, I can only imagine that his touch must be bursting with love, and you must feel the power when he touched them. Can you imagine what they felt? And when he looked at them, can you imagine the love that they saw in his eyes? It must have just stopped them in their tracks, and that's why everything changed for them afterwards. And he comes to us in this way. He comes to you in this way, and he comes to me in this way. A love that lets us know that we are seen. A love that communicates that we are known. That's a love that changes us. You see, not only did he come for the least of these, that's only half the story, maybe only half the good news. He became the least of these. Between those two thieves on the cross, like that song sings, criminals that really belonged on the cross, truly the least of those in the society back then. There were a lot of ways to be killed, maybe stoning and other ways I don't know about, but there were a lot of ways to be killed back then. But dying on the cross was the worst way, saved for the worst. So these criminals were there hanging on the cross, and literally the worst of these. And there's Jesus up there with them, that while we were still sinners, he died for us, and he took our sins upon him right there. And he took them and placed them as far as the east is to the west. And he made us white as snow. He made you that way because you're forgiven and you're loved. So no matter what we wish were different about ourselves, whatever we're struggling with about ourselves, we can trust ourselves in the hands of the one who made us and who is shaping us, because he touches us and he looks at us with a love that lets us know that we are seen. And he touches us with that love that communicates that we are known. And that love changes us. So if we feel like we're the least of these, please remember that that's a lie from the enemy, and it's not true. And if we can just tell each other that we feel that way, then we'll have reminders from each other that that is a lie and it's not true. You are never too much. You're never too little. You are just how God made you. Your heart is just how he designed it to be. You're special. You offer something to the world that only you can offer. The world needs you to be you just as you are. Your gifts, your unique ways, your heart, your abilities, your voice, your hindrances, your flaws, your quirks, your struggles. You make a difference, not in spite of, but because of them. That's loved. You are loved, and I am loved, and oh, how we need the reminders. So that's what I wanted to share with you this morning on Rhythms of Grace. And for me to even share anything about sports is a sign of his grace. So I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you at Sunday at Nature Coast Church. If I see you, good morning, John Paul. And oh, the Saints, getting the Saints some airtime today. Oh yeah, he did. He played for the Saints, which is probably why we were talking about him that day in the hospital. So yes. So Dottie, if she could have ever watched this, she probably would have been proud of me talking about Tom Dempsey. So anyhow, have a good day, everybody. And just remember that you're loved. And if you go to Nature Coast Church, I'll see you on Sunday. If not, you can watch it live on Facebook at 10 a.m. Or even the old sermons and on the Facebook page and on the website, which you can find from the Facebook page. I think you can click a link there. So have a blessed day. Bye.